Welcome back. We're moving on now, and we're going to be looking at reputation in business. So apart from business acumen and other qualities that will help you make money when you're in a business, what other things do you require? Just business acumen? Just the making of the money? That is a question we're going to ask our panel this morning, and it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Malaki Ugumadu, who's a legal practitioner.
I'm delighted to be here, thank you.
As well as Mr. Biodun Shomi, a social commentator.
Good morning, viewers.
Let me begin with you, Mr. Ugumadu. How much would you say that integrity or a man's reputation has to do with his business and his success in business?
To remove the reputation of a man is to put an end to any business enterprise. The reason being that by far more than the liquidity needed for any transaction, if there are no trusts, if there are no antecedents to associate a businessman with integrity in business, the whole exercise is as good as a failed one. Therefore, if you ask me, I would subscribe to the view that it will be difficult to think of a clear, perfect business arrangement if you're going to take away the integrity, transparency components of the whole picture. This is one area for which reason not just the people of the world, but even our own country, Nigeria, has made perhaps few deliberate efforts. I speak as a lawyer. The whole idea behind the Procurement Act, for instance, are geared towards securing some measure of integrity and transparency in our business activities, particularly regarding contracts, awards, and so on and so forth. So it's crucial.
You're a lawyer, so the issue of contracts.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Shomi, we have had some business relationships that sometimes go sour, and the things that are bandied around sometimes have to do with people's reputation / integrity.
Yes, it's quite very important. People keep forgetting that if you look at the socio-economic angle of doing business, it's more than it is my business, I own my company. No. Each company is playing a major role in the economy. One is not only providing employment to keep people engaged actively. Two, it's also generating income, for the government in terms of taxes and other levies which are needed, to run the whole economy and the whole country, including the political system in the country. Then three, it's always the goal of any government to ensure that the private sector develops sufficiently in a way that they can compete with other private sectors in other economies in the world, vis-a-vis, developing a quality products that can be marketed outside the country in order to address the issue of a balance of payment, system in business dealings between countries, one country and the other. If you don't have a vibrant private sector with integrity, what you'd end up having is that you have a public sector that would be deficit laden. Public spending will be deficit laden because government would have to step in to ensure that a lot of things are brought in, imported into the country rather than us producing them and exporting them. So the due diligence aspect, for instance, like mentioned by Malaki, which is the Public Procurement Act and what people know as a due process. There's the due diligence, how you conduct your business, what you are supposed to do. For instance, you are supposed to make annual returns to CAC. Do we do that? And do we have a system to check and make sure that many of our private sector businesses are actually complying with that? What about the issue of finance, for the banks? Because what you see is that most businesses are actually financed by loans from the bank. These loans are depositors' money from the poor to the rich. That's their money. How do people obtain this loan, and what do they use it for? Do they use it to finance a legitimate business activity, or this money at times, just disappear into people's private pockets, as we've seen in some cases in Nigeria, or the creation of SPV, special purpose vehicle, to circumvent the issue of collateral for security, to obtain loans in the bank, where you now create an SPV to deliver that goods, and at the end of the day, the SPV will die, the loan will disappear, and yet there'll be no business. So there are quite a lot of other issues. Integrity is quite very important in business.
It's interesting that you should mention loans and things, because I was going to zero in on what we have been watching and reading about lately in the feud between Ifeanyi Uba and Cosmos Maduka. I'm sure you have been following that story, Malaki. It all seems to be cut and dry, doesn't it? Somebody has borrowed money. He's not paying back the money as he's supposed to be paying back. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think Nigerians are again scandalized by the level of transgressions, if you like, business transgressions that are going on in the country. But I must tell you that exactly where we find it very difficult to comprehend is a direct implication of what we hear on the Nigerian people vis-a-vis the sector that is in focus, and that is the oil sector. Some of us, my colleague inclusive, were literally in the vanguard of the whole protest of January. We were proud organizers of that event. Now, to sit back today and realize that in less than 1 year, we didn't even have as much facts, as much offending details to motivate us and sustain the struggle we started in January,
as we have now,
is, to say the least, confirming that save and until we exit this inglorious past, there is every likelihood that you're going to have a more effective repeat of the January episode. How do I mean? We did not know as at January that you could open a deputy director's office in the pension sector and find 2 billion naira cash when pensioners are dying in droves, asked to queue to collect peanuts. We did not know as of January that when the National Assembly, albeit the House of Reps, constitutes a body or a committee to probe and investigate into the transgressions of the executive, what you find is that they constitute themselves into a further conduit pipe in the Farouk Gate and so on and so forth. We did not know, and now we are equipped, that the whole bogus story about Shaw was just a spontaneous reaction by a government that is, that was boxed into a corner to pull the wool over the eyes of the people. If you look at the story we were told about this show that tried to calm the nerves of the people and then take them one after the other, you will find that it was an idea, like Gani will tell us, that was conceived in treachery, nurtured in perfidy, and delivered in mischief. Sure, they say, was subsidy reinvestment and empowerment program. The key two words there are reinvestment and empowerment, presupposing that the subsidy itself, when removed as they intended, will be reapplied towards empowering the people of Nigeria along the lines of determinable, concrete, infrastructural development. We were told very beautiful stories, including roads. They were mentioned. I mean, I don't want to bore you with one after the other. And if you want to take a scorecard, turn the satellite on this show that have become very unsure now, you will find, to your amazement, that we're talking about a colossal failure, inclusive of railway, construction and so on and so forth. Now, I think we should get a little serious in this country, because the reality at the moment is that it is doubted that Nigerians can never rise. But those who make peaceful resolutions impossible also make violent resolutions inevitable. I'm using this word even as a lawyer, cautiously too. Only this morning.
How do you link this to
reputation, integrity, and
yes, in this particular business we're talking about?
I am beginning to draw a nexus between the character of lies we were told and the basis of a policy trust that needed to convince the people along the line of a particular enterprise. I took the subsidy policy of the government, the removal of policies of the government, as a major milestone by the federal government. And I was deliberately relating it with the efforts that were made to get the Nigerian people to key into that idea, in respect of which Nigerians rightly rejected it. As at that time, believing that, one, the whole idea itself, however clearly articulated, the government tried to do, were ideas that evolved simply because of leadership failure. I make the point, madam, and I'm landing here.
I beg your pardon, but we have seen that on many occasions, subsidies were paid on consignments that never arrived in this country. Mr. Shomi.
Yes. To be honest with you, the case of Capital Oil, which I think is the first one out of the 25 companies recommended by the Presidential Committee on Verification of Fuel Subsidy Payments, Capital Oil's case is the first one, which I am aware of, that is now in the open. If you look at the issues very clearly, there are serious public concerns issues. One, the federal government on its own part needs to review, the issue of how people obtain permits and license, because at the point in time when permits were obtained or renewed for Capital Oil, it was already clear that the company was in deep trouble because it has not been able to honor its obligations to the banks. And therefore, if a proper means test or a reference letter has been obtained from the bank, it will have been clear that they should not have issued that letter to Capital, the permit to Capital in the first instance, because that was what led to Capital Oil now trying to circumvent, the banks by using a third party, which I think is Cautionaries Motors or something,
yes,
to obtain a loan to finance it, which has all gone sour. Two, you also realize that from available materials in the public domain, it appears that even when fuel PMS is imported into the country. At times, they are kept in the tank farm without releasing it to the public, undermining the federal government on one part, what the federal government was trying to achieve. Two, creating artificial subsidy, artificial scarcity, creating problems for the public. Then, in the case of capital oil, if we are to use that as an example again, it became very clear that not only that some PMS were not delivered, I think it's about 60 million liters not delivered, which was paid for. They even went as far as collecting subsidy on it. You know, how could that have been possible when the fuel 60 million liters not delivered and you still collected fuel subsidy on that? These are serious issues that calls for the government to look at the processes. How are these things possible?